Hello, my name is Alex Iles, and in today's episode I'm going to be talking about West Hill, a hill fort in the Millfield Valley. Welcome back. So in today's episode I'm talking about West Hill, which is an amazing hill fort not too far away from the royal palace of Ardgeffryn at Yeavering in Northumberland. Now, what makes West Hill so interesting is it was probably used right from the early Iron Age right the way through to the Roman Iron Age, and we'll discuss that over the course of this episode. To start off with, West Hill began probably as a wooden palisade, quite a large wooden palisade around this top of this hill. And when it was like that, there was probably a couple of round houses in and around inside, which were in the earliest phase of occupation. That means it could be possibly late Bronze Age, early Iron Age, but there was a wooden palisade, which was then replaced by a stone wall around the outside of the hill. So in the second phase of occupation, we don't know how long the stone wall survived around the outside of the hill fort. But what we notice as we go into the Roman Iron Age is that a lot of the hill forts in Northumberland may have been actually abandoned maybe in the 1st century BC. So maybe from about 100 BC onwards, they're actually abandoned. And so the walls collapse, or in the Roman Iron Age, what happens is that the walls are ordered to be collapsed by the Romans. We don't know. In the 1st century AD, they may have actually gone around saying you're not allowed to have walls around your settlements, and so the walls would be collapsed. So in the third phase, what we see is an increase in the number of roundhouses within the area of the hill fort. And inside, we see what is commonly happening in Northumberland, but walls are built between the roundhouses to create little yards and growing space inside the settlement. So you're seeing quite a few roundhouses inside there, probably around 10 roundhouses, which could suggest a population of maybe 60, 100, maybe 120, depending on how you count it. If there's, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people living in each roundhouse, it just depends. But they had yards and workspaces around them. Then around the outside in the third phase, an earthen bank is developed around the outside of the hill fort. So this is an additional level of defense that is outside of the stone walls, and then either a wooden palisade is put into that or a hedge. They're not entirely certain. But there is something on top of the earth bank that provides defense and also requires a lot less intensive work than a stone wall to actually construct. And in the final phase, in the fourth phase, what's really interesting happens is that at West Hill, a D-shaped enclosure is then put in to the north side of the hill fort. And when it's put in there, a number of roundhouses are lined up in an almost L shape along the inside of the D-shaped enclosure. Now, when you get that, some archaeologists have actually commented that this is very similar to the development of actual villas that you see south of Hadrian's Wall. And what you actually get is with a villa, you normally get a central building, and then as it's aggrandized, you get wings attached to the front of the building. And then if the villa owner would become more wealthy or more influential or more powerful, those wings are then built out to eventually become what's called a courtyard villa, where it's basically a rectangle with a hollow space on the inside, then additional auxiliary buildings added onto the outside of the villa to continue to make it into a villa complex. So with this, it looks like that the persons or the people living at West Hill, because the rest of the settlement continues to live inside of the previous hill fort location, they are now seeing maybe a wealthier family develop, and they've then built this D-shaped enclosure with a line of roundhouses and then a line of roundhouses going off in an L shape. And so they are maybe inspired by the villa building that they've seen farther south, but they're doing it in a way that makes sense to them. They're doing it with roundhouses rather than the sort of compartmentalized rooms that you often see within villas. And so it's really interesting to see that they've maybe taken an idea from the Romans and then they've continued to do it within their own settlement up well past Hadrian's Wall into Northumberland near the Cheviots, and they're then using it and doing it there. And all around West Hill, there's a huge amount of agriculture going on to the south and east of the hill itself. And these are shown in farming terraces. They're shown in build-up of a cord and rig, which is medieval, but on top of prehistoric farming. And so all around West Hill, there's really good land is continuing to be used from the Iron Age into the Roman Iron Age period, and that's sustaining the community there. So it is possible that maybe one particular family within West Hill starts becoming more powerful and therefore influenced by the Romans, influenced by the way they did things. And so when they become more influenced by the Romans, they're taking that influence and then inspiring and developing their own smaller, compound within West Hill and the surrounding landscape, based off Roman models, based off the idea of Roman wealth, Roman power, Roman influence up here in the north of Britain. And that would be very interesting as well, because obviously the way that hill forts were utilized, the way that the aristocracy interacted with the Romans and also developed and interacted with their own people in the Roman period north of Hadrian's Wall is something that isn't best understood. But I think West Hill is one of these really interesting places where it might be going on here, where we're seeing a community, possibly within a community, that's becoming more influential, more powerful, more wealthy within the area. And what's really interesting as well is just slightly further to the east, closer towards Yeavering and where Ardgefren was, there's St Gregory's Hill. And where St Gregory's Hill is, we see a similar thing where another hill fort developing in a very similar pattern from an Iron Age settlement to a Roman Iron Age settlement, and also with the farming on the south and the east side as well to take advantage of the light of the sun and the warmth of the light coming to grow plants. But they're just a small distance away on another side of a river. So there's a river between the two settlements, and that's almost like a partition. So everything on the west side of the river belongs possibly to the West Hill community and the small developing, possibly elite villa owners. And then everything on the other side to the east of the river would belong to the St Gregory's Hill community and their hill fort. And so that's a really cool one to sort of debate and to understand and to think about how these people are living and interacting in the Roman Iron Age up in northern Britain, especially with the amount of farming going on and the amount they would be able to produce from the sort of rich valley of the Millfield Valley around them and what's going on there. But obviously without further excavation and without understanding of the site, because all of this is developed through field walking and through aerial photography and LiDAR, no excavation have actually occurred at the site. We won't actually know anything more until we actually get to excavate these places and find out how these people are living, what they're doing, and what's actually going on within the buildings and the compounds themselves. So I really hope you've enjoyed this, that you've learned a bit more, that maybe you want to go out and read a bit more about, the Iron Age hill forts of Northumberland and all of the different sites around there. I'll put some links to good things to look at in the description, and why not have a look yourselves and read more and put some questions in the comments, and let's have a friendly discussion about history in there. It'd be really interesting to see what you guys think. Alongside that as well, if you'd like to support me further, I also have a Ko-fi and a Patreon account, which you can find in the description as well, and it just means I can put aside time to make these videos for your enjoyment. In the meantime, please do like and subscribe, share the video with your friends, and help to join the channel, grow the channel, which would be absolutely amazing. Other than that, I hope you'll join me in another video in the near future, and until then, stay safe and well, and thank you very much for your time.